the dress she left to make me lie. I used to think secrets were invisible until they exploded. Then I learned they come with tags you can feel in your sleep. The tag on this one scraped my wrist every time I reached into my closet, a sliver of satin attached to a dress that did not belong to my fiancée. I am the kind of man whose job teaches him to distrust anything polished. I audit hospitality chains, which means I spend my days lifting rugs and counting what falls out. The week it began, my firm sent me to review a boutique hotel that pretended it was a museum of good decisions. Brass elevator, velvet chairs, a front desk that called you by your preferred mistake. My best friend Leo handled the sales charm while I ran numbers and asked questions that made men smooth their ties. The hotel's owner, Damien Vale, liked making wealth look like a hobby. He collected sculpture, reputations, and my attention at the moment his wife walked in. Leela Vale had the kind of stillness that makes rooms behave. She wore a charcoal sheath and a smile that conceded nothing. Damien introduced us with pride that felt rehearsed, and she shook my hand as if agreeing to a pact. Later, when she passed by the lobby bar where I was pretending to like small talk, she set down a napkin next to my glass and wrote a phone number on it like she was authorizing a withdrawal. It should have ended there. I was engaged. Elena was kind in the way that makes you ashamed of almost everything you have been. We had a leased apartment, a wedding date her mother liked, and a set of plates that cost more than honesty. I told myself Leela's number was a joke told by a bored woman. I folded the napkin into a square small enough to lose. Night makes liars out of men who call themselves careful. I was on the hotel's mezzanine, reviewing occupancy anomalies, when I heard her voice drift from the balcony that overlooked the lobby. She was alone, no witnesses except the city below us. She leaned on the railing like a mathematician considering a problem with no elegant solution. I should have left. Instead, I stood 3 steps behind her and said the one sentence I had not authorized in advance. You looked like someone trying to remember who they were before they learned their lines. She turned slow, the way a person does when they decide to risk a bruise. She asked what I remembered. I told her about borrowed rooms and rented faces. She moved closer until the air between us learned a new shape. We did not break rules a camera would recognize. We practiced a choreography that would pass a public test and fail every private one. Her perfume found my collar. My hand found the topography of her shoulder. Our mouths met like a promise whispered through cloth. When I got home, the satin dress was already in my closet. It took me 3 minutes to realize how. Elena had been cleaning for a photo shoot she wanted to post of our freshly domestic life. She had lined up our good shirts, her dresses, the kind of sneakers that make men think they are interesting. On a hanger among my suits hung a dress I had never seen, black with a midnight sheen, neckline like a secret. Pinned to the fabric was a tag with a tiny metal charm shaped like a key. I stood in the quiet like a suspect waiting for the knock. It did not come. Instead, Elena came out of the bathroom and asked whether we should do blue flowers or white. I said blue because it sounded like clarity, and she nodded and said you always choose the honest color and went to text a florist I had not met. I told myself it was a mix-up. Hotels lose and deliver. Dry cleaners make choices. My building's concierge had once put someone else's groceries in our freezer and we ate their blueberries for a week. I told myself a lot. I did not touch the dress. But the tag scraped me when I reached for a tie and the closet began to smell like citrus I did not buy. The next afternoon, Leela texted. Coffee, she wrote, and sent an address I knew from audits. A gallery that belonged to Damien's friend, the kind where glass learned to preen. I arrived telling myself I was collecting data. She sat by the window, light climbing her wrist like a rumor. "You got home fast last night," she said. The sentence was a line tossed onto a lake to see how deep the water was. "A dress in my closet says otherwise," I said. Her mouth curved. "I left it there," she said, and I believed her because it was the only sentence that turned chaos into design. This was an alibi she wanted me to learn by heart. If anyone asked, we could both be telling the truth while describing different nights. Why, I asked. Because men still pretend they do not understand gravity. Because it is impossible to blackmail a person who has already decided what to lose, she said. Because my husband collects leverage like it will save him. Because you look like the kind of man who cleans messes other men pretend not to see. Because I am tired of my reflection being the only witness. We drank coffee and didn't touch. She told me something small and terrible. Damien had installed a family safety system in their apartment, which sounded like concern until you saw where the cameras were pointed. The recording saved to a cloud a board member managed. I knew that board member. It was the kind of circle that made breathing a policy decision. I left the gallery with a plan shaped vaguely like caution. That plan disappeared when I reached my office and found Leo waiting with a grin he used when he had either closed a deal or decided I owed him a favor. "The Vales invited us to their penthouse Friday," he said, as if the word "us" had always included me in the kind of evenings where waiters remember your childhood. "Congratulations," I said. "On what?" "Partnership," he said. "If we keep them happy, Vale Hotels becomes a retainer we pass down to our grandchildren. Wear the suit that lies politely." On Friday, Elena wore a dress the color of sunrise and looked at me like a man she had chosen on purpose. I promised myself to be worthy for 3 hours in a room with a woman who had hung a different truth next to my suits. We took an elevator that pretended to be a silent film and stepped into an apartment that overlooked the city like a god trying to remember mercy. Damien greeted us with good whiskey and loud sincerity. Leela greeted Elena with admiration that felt like a disarming ceremony. She greeted me with nothing at all, which landed somewhere between kindness and threat. People arrived whose names had last names. Lee told a story that made a betrayal from 5 years ago sound like a prank. I listened like an auditor, smiled like a man who did not know where his own floor began. There is a moment at these gatherings when the music is low and the terrace door is open, and everyone is talking to the wrong person. That is when the story changes shape. Leela drifted to the glass railing, and I followed because I always do the thing I tell myself I won't. We stood an inch apart and did not touch. "Your closet," she said. "I hope you pretended before you explained." "I didn't explain," I said. "I am conserving words I might need later." Her laugh was quiet and warm enough to be mistaken for forgiveness. "You will need all of them," she said. Then she leaned, just slightly, and the world came close enough to be dangerous. I could feel the heat of her without moving. It was the kind of proximity that leaves no evidence and ruins everything. Behind us, Elena's voice called my name. She smiled when I turned and pointed to a painting, a splash of red that wanted to be a heart. "Tell me if this is actually good," she said, and I told her yes because I wanted at least one truth tonight to be easy. We left early because Elena had promised her sister we would stop by. In the elevator down, she threaded her fingers through mine and said you were quiet. I said the room ate the noise. She kissed my knuckle like a person reminding herself of a decision. When we got home, the dress was gone. In its place on the hanger was a note pinned with that tiny key. It read "Return me and learn." No signature, no flourish. The handwriting was elegant enough to make you forget it was a threat. I slept on the sofa and dreamed of quiet doors. In the morning, I took the note to the only person I trusted to read handwriting like a crime scene. Surrey runs a small stationery shop 2 blocks over and knows everyone's secrets from the way they select envelopes. She looked at the looped R and said a woman who learned to be watched wrote this. She looked at the tiny key and said the charm is a brand Damien's people gift to donors when they want them to feel kept. Kept, the word made something sour rise in my throat. I went to the hotel and handed the dress to the concierge, who did not blink, because concierges in this city have seen people return worse things to the wrong lives. He tucked it away and said Mrs. Vale will be grateful. I did not ask how he knew it was hers. My phone buzzed before I reached the curb. Damien. Lunch, he wrote. He chose a place where the bill comes with a handshake. I sat, and he did the thing men do when they think they are charming. He told me my future. My wife likes you, he said. You're the kind of man who makes noise sound like the ocean. Should I be flattered? I said. You should be practical, he said. We have a delicate balance here. I value balance. Personal curiosities aside, what matters is discretion and results. I expect both. Personal curiosities landed like a pebble tossed from a penthouse. He watched me the way men watch other men when they are evaluating the price of permission. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were printouts of financial projections for an expansion I would normally dismantle in an afternoon. There was also a still image printed on matte paper. A balcony, a woman's profile, the angle of a man's body leaning too near. From behind, we were any two people flirting with gravity. From above, we were exactly ourselves. The apartment has a safety system, Damien said. Cloud storage is a marvelous thing. It remembers what we forget. I put the photo back in the folder the way you put a creature back in a cage that was beautifully built for it. What do you want? I asked, and the question was a ledger entry. Keep us solvent, he said. Keep us interesting to institutions that enjoy writing checks. Keep my name away from anything sticky, and keep your hands in your pockets when you visit my home. In exchange for what? I said. In exchange for nothing leaking, he said, and smiled. A grin is a story with an ending you cannot revise. I took the folder. I took the train nowhere and thought about leverage indoors and the way suffering teaches you to sort your anger by temperature. Then I did the thing I am built for. I opened a new document and wrote a report that would keep investors content and regulators curious in all the wrong ways. I stripped adjectives until the numbers were both plausible and dressed for company. I built a bridge from lie to tolerated fiction and left a trap inside the footnotes. A question about the source of a mysterious line item labeled legacy security that would lie there like a coin on the floor until the right person tripped over it. That night, Leela appeared in my phone with an address I did not recognize and a single word: choose. I stood by the kitchen sink until the word stopped sounding like a threat and started sounding like a door. I did not go. Instead, I went to Alina and told her the truth with a surgeon's steadiness and a coward's heart. I said there was a woman who had become a problem because I allowed her to, that nothing irreversible had happened, which is a sentence men love because it is both true and useless, and that I had broken something anyway. Alina listened like a person reading a map that keeps changing north. She asked me if I loved the woman. I told her I loved the part of myself that felt awake around her. She said that was worse. Then she did something I will be grateful for until I die. She did not call me names. She told me to leave for a week and think without my jaw clenched. She packed a bag for me and set my favorite mug in it because she is an expert in mercy in ordinary objects. When I stepped into the hall, she said, I hope the choice you make is one you can live with when the room is empty. I stayed in a business hotel that smelled like outsourced dignity. I slept, finally, like a person who had done the thing his body had been begging him to do, choose discomfort over deceit. In the morning, I sent 3 emails. One to Damien, proposing a revised security posture that would make indiscriminate cloud retention impossible without multiple approvals. One to the hotel's board, including a careful note about potential liabilities associated with legacy security, and a draft policy to prevent the misuse of domestic footage for corporate leverage. And one to Layla, 9 words long. You left address. I am returning myself instead. She called. Her voice was quiet, the kind quiet that suggests a woman is holding herself together with thread she spun out of air. He will punish me for losing a pawn, she said. You are not a pawn, I said. You are a person. My work makes you safer even if it makes me lonelier. That has to be enough. There was a pause weighted like a river stone. Then she said, "Be well," and the line went soft. The board moved faster than I expected because sometimes shame does magic. Damien announced a new era of privacy compliance with a smile that made investors applaud their own reflection. Leo told me I had made us indispensable. Elena texted me a photo of the apartment plants and said they seemed to like the quiet. I replied that I did not. A week later, I went home. Elena poured tea and sat across from me without defenses except her spine. We are not fixed, she said. We might never be. But I would rather try to live with a man who tells me exactly when he begins to slip than marry one who finds dresses in closets and writes reports around them. I said I am a man who has learned that closeness without contact can be more catastrophic than anything else. She said I am a woman who has learned that forgiveness is not the same as forgetting. We agreed to walk the next month without declaring it a victory. I still see Leela sometimes because cities are small and the wealthy love the same rooms. We do not speak. She wears black less. Damien pretends civility is a signature he invented. The hotel's cameras now blink toward exits and elevators and away from the rooms where people tell the worst version of themselves the truth. As for the dress, I assume it is hanging somewhere between 2 lives, exact and useless and beautiful. The tiny key charm sits on my desk next to a paperweight that looks like a wave. I keep it as a reminder of what not to open. When I reach for a pen, the metal scrapes my skin. It is a small pain that teaches me something I should have learned younger. Secrets are not invisible. They are garments you carry into rooms you should not enter. If you are lucky, you return them before they become your size. And if you are honest, you accept that the only wardrobe you can live in is the one that does not require a key.